The topic for this panel discussion is diagnostics. To participate in the conversation, we have with us Dr. Sashi Reddi, Dr. Naveen Ashish, Mr. Dinesh Koka, and Mr. Guna Kakulapati. Dr. Sashi Reddi is the current managing partner at SRI Capital. He was the founding president of TIE Philadelphia and a board member of T-Hub Hyderabad. Dr. Reddi has founded 4 startups over the last 20 years. His last company, App Labs, a software testing firm with 2,500 employees, was acquired by Computer Sciences Corporation. He also helped in the launch of IIT Delhi's endowment fund. Initially, he established a web content management company, Easy Power Systems, which was then acquired by a part of Reddi. Dr. Sashi secured a Bachelor of Technology in Computer Science and Engineering from IIT Delhi. He then did his MS in Computer Science from Courant Institute of Mathematical Scientists at New York University. He obtained a PhD in Operations and Information Management from the University of Pennsylvania, the Wharton School. Welcome, sir. Our next panelist is Dr. Naveen Ashish. He is currently serving as the Chief Data Science Officer at InferLink Corporation. He has also been guest faculty at University of Washington and is the founding director, Head of Data Science, Fred Hutch. Dr. Ashish is an expert in the development and application of artificial intelligence techniques, such as machine learning, deep learning, natural language processing, and semantics. He is a pioneer in the particular domain of biomedical data science. He has authored over 100 technical research papers at top conferences and journals and has written 2 books. Dr. Naveen did his Bachelor of Technology, Computer Science from IIT Kanpur. He then received his PhD in Computer Science from University of Southern California. Welcome, sir. We then have with us Mr. Dinesh Koka. He is the co-founder and CEO of Onward Assist. He was a fellow at Leaders in Innovation Fellowship at the Royal Academy of Engineering. He was the CEO of Onward Health and COO at eKincare. He also had various leadership positions at Wipro GE Healthcare and NIIT Technologies. He initially started his career as a network client support engineer at Satyam. He did his BE from Sri Venkateshwar College of Engineering. He then received his degree from IIM Lucknow. Welcome, sir. Our next panelist is Mr. Guna Kakulapati. He is the co-founder and CEO of CureSkin. Mr. Guna started his career as a research scientist with University of Illinois and later went on to work with Amazon. He then joined Google and worked there for almost 5 years as a member of technical staff. Mr. Guna eventually founded BitStalk, a programmatic platform for mobile advertising, which was acquired by Applift, where he was the CTO of Indian operations, and then later he founded CureSkin. Mr. Guna did his BTech in Computer Science from IIT Madras. He then received his MS in Computer Science from University of Illinois. Welcome, sir. Without any further ado, I would like to request Dr. Reddi to take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Tavishi. Thank you for that introduction. I'm so excited to be here. This is the Diagnostics Panel. And as you saw from the introduction, we've got an excellent set of panelists to actually walk us through the market landscape. So before we jump into the panel, maybe I'll just set some of the context to the industry, which I'm sure that you guys already know, but worth setting. So the diagnostics market in India is large. It's about $32 billion. It's a massive market, highly fragmented. All the top chains put together probably have about 6% of the market. So it's highly disorganized. But it's also an area of like a lot of interest. At a high level, diagnostics can be broken down into 2 segments. One is the pathology, and the second would be like the imaging space, right? And then within that, of course, you have like your really the routine tests, like your testing for sugar, like cholesterol and HIV, those types of things. Then you have like the clinical tests, which is like to monitor like various disease conditions, drug impact, and all that. And then you have like the specialized tests, which is like a genomics and oncology and all of that stuff. So broadly, that is the diagnostics industry. And I'm sure that we've all had to go for some tests like throughout our lives. So we're all like quite familiar. But what's happened in the last like year or two is due to a COVID, which of course has impacted us in multiple ways. But there are 2 things that really jumped out from the entire COVID thing, right? One, is the vaccinations and your mRNA technologies. Some things that could have taken forever to come to becoming like real mature technologies have in a very short period of time become things that we can now use for COVID, but will soon be using for a whole bunch of disease conditions. So I think that's one huge thing that happened from, COVID. But the second thing that happened was impact on the diagnosis, like the testing. So all of us, say that you have to travel, you're taking a test, or if you're going to school, you're probably taking a test every week. Or if you live in like certain communities, you're doing all the sewage testing for COVID. So basically, if you look at COVID, the impact on the diagnostic industry is going to be massive. So while we have this thing happening with this like new urgency on testing, at the same time, we've also had the maturity of different tools in AI and other things that have now come to bear. So between this urgency plus the maturity of all these tools and technologies, we suddenly, I think, are at a very interesting point in time for the entire industry. So it's such a good time to be having like this discussion with the panel. So maybe I'll start with asking each of the panelists to give a short introduction about what they do and what's their area of interest, and then we'll take it from there. So could I start with you, Naveen, to talk about what you do?
Sure. In my current role, I am leading the data science efforts for InferLink, which is a small, focused AI R&D company, as we describe ourselves. We work in general areas of AI and data science applied to different domains, including but not restricted to the biomedical data science domain. Prior to this, I spent 2 years at Fred Hutch Cancer Center, that is also in Seattle, in building their first applied cancer data science research group. And this was a group of people where we had computer scientists and data scientists sit together with cancer researchers and see what we could bring from the world of machine learning, natural language processing, big data management to addressing these kinds of problems. So broadly, I describe myself as an applied data scientist with a continued focus in biomedicine and health.
Thank you, Naveen. Do you want to go next, Guna? What do you do?
Hey, everyone. I'm Guna Kakulapati. I'm the co-founder and CEO of CureSkin. At CureSkin, we take a very different approach here. We are a very B2C company, and we are more focused on at-home diagnostics assisted with a mobile phone. And here we also provide a full stack solution where it's not just about diagnosis, but also about treatment management and very outcome-oriented solutions for skin and dermatology. We have our mobile Android app where you take photos for your skin analysis, and our technology would analyze these photos, taking into consideration different lighting conditions and angles and so on, which are common challenges in a B2C world. And we are currently focused mainly on acne, pigmentation, hair fall kind of conditions, but also working on applying this for psoriasis, eczema, and other very specific skin conditions to get the same level of accuracy as a qualified physician. And we not only diagnose, but also work with our in-house doctors to prescribe personalized treatments. And these treatments are home delivered anywhere in India. So it's truly a derma-focused full stack solution heading with AI. So we use extensively the image recognition capabilities on photos on mobile phones.
Thank you, Guna. Dinesh?
Sure, Sashi. Hello, everyone. My name is Dinesh Koka, co-founder and CEO of Onward Assist. At Onward Assist, we're focused on cancer analytics, and a big part of our focus is in cancer pathology. We're primarily building machine learning and computer vision-based tools to assist cancer pathologists who typically do this through a microscope and take a certain amount of time. But we're primarily building the tools to assist them to do it faster with higher accuracy. And stuff that we are actually excited about is we are actually able to uncover new information, new clinical information, which we believe can actually eventually help oncologists take more accurate or new treatment decisions. My background in healthcare, like my intro said, actually kind of colored or give a lot of the motivations that we use today, having worked with a lot of regional cancer centers, setting up public-private partnership projects or consulting with state governments. So we've seen what are the challenges that providers face across private and public healthcare. And oncology definitely is one of those where clinicians already face a lot of challenges, right? More than half of the patients receive treatments which don't work for them. So definitely they're open to, solutions that can help them improve treatment outcomes, right? That's about me, and definitely looking forward to this discussion.
Thank you, Dinesh. So I think we'll get started with, like a topic that I'm like most fascinated about. What is it that we can do today that we could not have done 5 years ago in terms of the diagnosis, the disease conditions, and so on and so forth? What could we do today that we could not have done even 5 years ago? Maybe could I start with you, Naveen, on that?
Definitely. I think one thing that if we look at that 5-year timeline, right? So we've had technologies like deep learning for image analysis appear in the last decade. That's definitely more than going 5 years back. But I would say that 5 years ago, we did not have the kind of promise from technologies such as deep learning or more unstructured machine learning for analyzing images in at least 2 domains that I've worked with. So various kinds of cancers, breast cancer, and I'll talk a little bit more about some specific kinds of horrible breast cancers where there is promise from deep learning for diagnostics and prognostics. Also in the domain of neuroscience, so predicting the early prediction of the onset of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. To the best of my knowledge, I do not think we were in the position to have something scalable in these areas about 5 years ago.
Absolutely, Naveen. Guna, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, deep learning definitely in terms of the tooling, availability of the GPUs, capability. So what we are doing today in CureSkin could not have been possible like maybe 6 years ago, 5 to 6 years ago. The other part is also how people are using devices, because we are more in the at-home kind of care, that they are ubiquitous, always interacting, always connected, and providing us a way to monitor and engage with them on a more continuous basis. So I think that is also a key difference, especially post-COVID.
Yeah, if I had to add, one is even where in situations where AI may not be necessarily involved, across the last 5 years, one big thing that has definitely changed is access. A patient or a consumer, right? It's become very easy, right? Maybe comparing to what it was in 15 or 16, where we were just starting to build out all the inventory online, suppose, right? And now you can just log in and get an appointment for the most sophisticated or most complex of tests. Like that's a big change, at least from an Indian context, right? So that all of that inventory or the capability is available, somewhere, right? There are multiple providers as well. There's enough choice as well around that access. That is one. Second, I'll kind of just to echo what Naveen mentioned, right? We're definitely seeing AI play a role, definitely around imaging. Breast cancer is definitely an example, easy example, because if not complete diagnostics in terms of detecting tumors or nodes, AI is already playing a role in identifying the risky cases, right? So especially if you're not in a cancer institute, if you're in a diagnostic institute, mammograms come in and 70% of them are not going to be malignant, right? Mm-hmm. So how do we kind of prioritize the radiologist? And so that is a place where AI has a huge role. And then work has been done. We've done some in collaboration with some partners. So that is definitely, those are areas, right? Similar is chest X-rays, right? Where you're trying to look for lung nodules, or just you're just trying to weed out benign cases. So those are the places where we're already seeing some applications, right? Yeah.
Okay, Dinesh. Actually, it's a bit interesting that all three of you didn't touch on 2 areas that I'm most excited about, which is one is the genomics aspect of it, that the cost has come out so much that now we're seeing so much work on the genomics front, and the second is is actually the microbiome. I find that entire thing fascinating as to what we might be able to do with the microbiome analysis. So to just move on to, like you got Guna here, who's more on the B2C side, and like you got Dinesh here, who sells like to hospitals, like B2B type of model. So like starting with you, Guna, are there things that you can do more of, which are really like the consumer driven types of tests like you're doing for the skin? What else could we be doing on that front? And the same for Dinesh as to which parts do you think are most suitable for what you do, which is to sell like through the healthcare system, which are more driven by the provider, by the doctor? So starting with you, Guna.
Yeah, we look at it, it's a great question. We look at it as a point in time diagnostic versus like continuous regular diagnostic. And what at least our learning has been that the at home really excels on this continuous kind of diagnostic. And it can even be, in many cases, it is more suited for lifestyle kind of issues. Derma is one, but also around like diabetes and other conditions which have to be managed over a long period of time. But even in skin, even for, let's say, skin cancer or melanoma, even the most specialized doctors in many cases cannot say whether that mole is malignant or not in a single visit or a single photo. What they need to look at is how this thing has progressed over a period of time, or how this has evolved over a period of time. And that is where this kind of at-home B2C approach helps, where you are taking photos every day, every week, and you know whether the condition is relapsing, getting worse, or even if it is certain conditions are not diagnosed, but with the stream of data rather than a single unit of data will help us understand the conditions better. So I would say mainly on derma and lifestyle and continuous management cases.
Okay. Interesting. There again, like I came across this thing about like a smart toilet where, it's able to monitor like a situation at home essentially based on how things are happening in the gut microbiome. But yes, so that maybe that's another area. So Dinesh, so what areas do you see as being best suited for how you approach the market?
Sure. I think treatments where typically are done inpatient, right? Clinical treatment decisions are done, and or even treatments are more inpatient. I mean, those are the ones that at least we are seeing, right? Cancer is the easy one, right? Where there's a huge involvement of a multimodal, involvement of different types of specialties. What we are seeing is oncology is also a longer cycle treatment, right? It's not done, in the outpatient or within one sitting. You follow a protocol, which is typically, from a few months, it can go down to even 6-9 months, right? So that where the involvement of the provider is fairly high, a lot of inpatient, treatment is going to happen. And that's primarily where, a lot of our work, of course, is all B2B. Our solution that, we build tech for are B2B, right? These are, our target or clients that we work with are diagnostic networks who provide, the lab services, as well as hospitals who provide those treatments, right? So that is primarily what we are seeing, as well as, I think one of the points that you mentioned earlier, where the science is still a little bit more complicated, right? So, obviously a lot of the NCD you can have at home or wearable based at least trackers, right? So wherever it is more involved, right? Science is still complicated. I'm sure even that will get simplified over time, where, you already have examples of, saliva-based tests being available at home, but wherever it's slightly more involved, where the expertise required is higher, there definitely it's more a B2B approach, and building solutions is more relevant if you're building it for the provider or the clinician. That's primarily what we have seen.
So, like in terms of the provider-driven thing, like, do you see the distinction between like the smaller doctors' clinics versus the big hospital-type settings? I mean, how do you see that distinction between the provider setting?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think that primarily once you go provider, be it a smaller clinic or the larger one, it's about, are we cutting down, are we making it more efficient for them, right? Are we cutting down time or patient exposure time, or are we making their clinical decision-making process simpler, right? So we actually have, ECGs connected on the cloud, but being available in a smaller clinic in a tier 2, tier 3 or low resource setting, So there again, it's primarily about making expertise available at that. Even though it's still an NCD for a cardiac condition, we're still seeing those people uptake, right? So over the last 3-4 years, the number of connected ECGs has really gone up, right? The number of connected ICUs has obviously gone up, not necessarily diagnostics though. Once we go to the more complex diseases, be it even neuro or oncology, then you're talking about inpatient, not necessarily outpatient, and then you're talking about starting at the 100-bed hospital plus, and kind of concentrating in the larger towns. Right?
Okay, Dinesh, thank you. So if you take the same lens to you, Naveen, in terms of you're in applied research, so you sort of see what's coming to the market, what's near, what we can see, what could help us all in the next 5 years, right? So what types of things are you most excited about that could come out of applied research? And would those be more like on the consumer side? Would they be more like provider-driven types of technologies coming out? What do you see in that?
Definitely 2 or 3 things that I want to talk about. And, where I see the time getting ripe, stepping out from the highly encouraging results in the research. So the first one is one step beyond diagnostics. It touches upon treatment planning, and it is straight out of the breast cancer domain, and a particularly aggressive form called triple negative breast cancer. And this is work that we are in the early stages of with groups at Fred Hutch Cancer Center. So they are the oncology experts and understanding of the images, and then we InferLink kind of come in from the deep learning and image analysis perspective. But the whole hypothesis is that complete pathologic response in patients with triple negative breast cancer is a very strong indicator of how they are likely to respond to chemotherapy. So if you see if you're able to achieve a complete PCR, a complete pathologic response, your chances of survival of a patient, they improve dramatically to something like 80% chance of no recurrence in the next 10 years. Some pretty good numbers. And the earlier work has shown that there is signal in the breast cancer MRI image, particularly one form of it, which is DW-MRI, diffusion weighted MRI. And there's work in statistical analysis that has shown that there are certain features in these images that are highly predictive of how a patient would respond to chemotherapy, whether a patient would respond to chemotherapy, yes or no. So this is something that bears upon treatment planning. And what we are putting together with them is a plan where we bring in, even more firepower in terms of, again, deep learning for imaging over these MRI images. And the whole outcome there would be something very practical, very operational, which is you can identify for a patient whether it's worth it, putting them on chemotherapy, or sparing everybody that agony and going down that hole and diverting them towards something that has a much better, something like immunotherapy. So this is one area of treatment planning that I'm very excited about. The second one is a different domain, which is congestive heart failure. So this is a huge problem. Big numbers, at least in the US, it is. This is something where even expert qualified physicians are not able to, this is something that you can't pick up from the heartbeat. So from what I understand and from what our collaborators tell us, there is something called a third heartbeat sound. They call it S3, which is rather hard and subtle to pick up with your stethoscope and no matter how experienced you are. But technology can come in here. So we are working with a company, also incidentally founded by someone from IIT Kanpur, senior to me in the Seattle area. It's a company called Steth.io, and it's basically the stethoscope on the iPhone. So there's this little coin-sized device which you attach to the iPhone, and it is capable of picking up somebody's heartbeat. And what we are working on with them is taking that signal real time as it comes back and applying all that good AI and machine learning stuff to provide a prediction that someone is going to have a CHF incident or an episode in the future, and can we intervene early enough to prevent? Otherwise, what happens is there are too many physician visits, there are ER visits. The cost of this is about 30 billion per year in the US, translating to about over 100K per patient per year. So this is something that I think is we have a solution for it, right? So we have a way of picking up the signal, we have a way of analyzing that signal and providing a practical solution. The third one is a little distant, but compared to these two, like the triple negative breast cancer treatment planning and the congestive heart failure prediction one, but I'll talk about it, which is early detection of dementia. So I spent a good number of years at UC Irvine and USC, primarily working with neuroscientists, and more so on some of the fundamentally important and prevalent data sets. Like one data set is ADNI, which is the Alzheimer's disease neuroimaging initiative, which is this huge collection of collected painstakingly over the years, data about Alzheimer's and dementia patients, but not only clinical data, which is very important, but also a lot of neuroimaging data, and these being neuroimaging labs. And the thesis is we haven't seen practical applications for this yet, but I hope this will come out in the next 5 years. There's nothing we are personally doing actively in this space, but it has been proven that there is signal in the MRI images, and other variants like PET images and SPECT scans, which are predictive of the onset of dementia. There is information in these cognitive and memory assessment tests. We have the data for all of that, and also possibly in someone's medical history. And what good would early detection do of the onset of the disease? A whole lot of good, because right now all of the hope for therapy is towards drugs for pushing the condition back. But it's once that we know that this you predict early enough that that there is going to be an onset of dementia, then you can provide those interventions. So these are definitely three areas. So treatment planning and cancer. So there's a lot of work in, we were talking about like detection in various kinds of cancers, and I hopefully that will be a highly solved problem in the very near future. But then also beyond that, things like treatment planning, and then these other domains like congestive heart failure prediction and early detection of dementia. So.
No, it's really fascinating, Naveen. I think all three are like really fascinating stuff that we should all expect to see, and hopefully it's going to help all of us. I just want to go back to this the STET.io example that you gave. So I think like you touched on something that I think we've not talked about so far, is that you talked about like an attachment to the phone.
Yeah.
Actually, there's a lot of this innovation happening around like the devices that are either attached to the smartphone or like skin patches, all these things that are really changing the needle. If you have any other thoughts on that, please share with us on these like other types of innovation outside of AI, which just have to do with like your materials and devices.
I have friends working in those areas, so not directly. So you mentioned like wearables, and so there's another project that we have recently started with the University of Minnesota, and that's in the area that's not in the area of detection. It is in the area of behavioral intervention for people with atrial fibrillation. So, but there the whole idea is that amongst the devices, they tell me about things like very non-intrusive light variables that we would get signal back from. That is not. I mean, we work with that data. The same thing in the domains like alcohol and substance abuse and things like that. So that's not something we are directly working in, but we work with the data from there.
Yeah, I think that goes to something you were saying, Guna, earlier about or the continuous monitoring, I think all these things are going to play a role there, I guess. Yeah.
Exactly. Even the capabilities, like for us, for the capabilities on phone to do like multispectral imaging instead of just like a regular RGB images, or even the continuous glucose monitoring that people attach to continuously monitor their blood sugar and so on. So these are quite exciting, and these attachments are going to give data over a period of time to understand the condition better.
So Guna and Dinesh, both of you run companies in India, one in Bangalore, one in Hyderabad, and in both cases, I guess what you guys accumulate a lot of data, right? And then you do all these studies, and you're showing the efficacy of what you're doing and so on. How does all of this work really translate if you want to take your offering outside India to the other markets? How does that work? So maybe you want to go first, Guna, and then Dinesh. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that's actually, there are challenges. I think the first one we encountered, we've been trying to position this also as a SAMD software, as a medical device, and get the necessary certifications to do that. One of the challenges being the trial data itself being representative for the country. So here, the kind of trials that we have done, we wanted to kind of expand that also into the other markets so that we can be representative for that. And also more around the process around certification, understanding the whole like the classification, the document, like for example, different classes of devices, the timelines and the expenses and so on. So these are usually the operational challenges are what we mainly see, and also the fact that we need to tailor the diagnostics to the nuances and the manifestations of that condition. Like, for example, if you're talking about certain skin conditions which are much more prevalent on Caucasian skin type compared to, like, for example, in India. So we need to be more aware of that and also enhance our capabilities since these conditions may not be seen in the images that we have collected, for example, in India.
Okay, thank you.
We kind of uncovered this process. It's been a learning for us over the last 4 years as well. I think the main challenge is around making sure you have a good QMS around this, right? The way you collect data, right, and the way you manage it, right, the way you secure it. Because once you want to go outside, right? Because for the last couple of years we work with a couple of partners, couple of academic institutes in the US. Right, that's been a big learning for us. Right, there's a huge importance around data governance. Right, maintaining those records around how do you maintain them and how do you secure them. Right, like Guna was mentioning, there are completely identified standards, right, or processes that have been defined specifically for medical device, and the kind of stuff that we are building, they function as a diagnostic device, right? So SAMD, right, software as a medical device. There's been a lot of clarity that's come out of both EU, right, as well as the FDA, the US FDA, over the last 1 year. But at least the providers or the institutes have been kind of setting up their own systems around how they manage data, right? So I think the first thing is what kind of data governance that we are able to show for whatever we built, right? Even if it is purely out of Indian entities, that is one. And two, I think the way that we do our studies, right? So currently we are undergoing a clinical trial. So right at the time we set up that trial, we try to make sure the structure of the study or the design of the study is such that the data will become admissible to FDA as well. So back early, you might know, right? So we were having discussions around all the work that we do here, should have relevance there. So we kind of went through that exercise around setting right the way we collect data and do our trials here, right? So that the statistical analysis and all of that will be admissible. So of course the processes are slightly different between a CE and and FDA. FDA obviously wants to have a deeper look around the entire study, right? What we've gone through. CE is as long as they're concerned about, as long as the hygiene of the study has been ensured. There are different classes that you can go through, but these are a few ways that we've kind of tried to ensure or de-risk the process, right? So one was set up the process. Once we learned that these are the things that you need, moved very fast and set up those processes so that and obviously, right, a lot of this is to our own benefit, one. And two is from a logistical standpoint, right? Also went out, sought those clinical partnerships. We have a couple in the US and one in the NHS with a NHS trust as well. So those from a logistically, also give us a lot of understanding of all the stuff that we build. How do they embed in the medical process in those economies? So at least those are the couple of ways that we have learned, right? And that's the reason the trial data that we are going through right now, once we complete them, we know that, yes, we can use them for a pre-submission in one of these markets, one of these two markets. Yeah.
Dinesh, thank you. And I think the both of you, when you gave your answers, used like the word, like the term data probably about like 10 times each. So for us, how we handle data is like so critical to everything that we do, and all these AI models, everything depends on this data. So Naveen, so can you like really weigh in on the fact that, in healthcare, at least, unlike other industries, healthcare data is sort of so dispersed across different entities, each one's hanging on to their data. So how does one make progress with this type of like situation of all this data being spread everywhere?
This is a problem that, refuses to go away. So part of my thesis over, like, I would say 20 years ago, dealt with aspects of data integration, not in the biomedical context. And then I have seen it's ubiquitous, whether you're doing, neuroscience research or cancer research, and there have also been some spectacular, embarrassing failures, and very expensive ones, from the NIH, from the NCI, like the CA Grid initiative, like when people, just said, burnt up a whole lot of money and said, let's set some standards here, and everybody is going to follow this schema from tomorrow. So that has never worked. Okay, but where the light at the end of the tunnel is, and where I have seen practical federations of over 100 sources come together, and to me, 100 data sources is a big number. Just from the fact that they can kind of agree to enter a federation and contribute data in a big way. The model that I have seen work is something more loosely coupled, where the institutions that originally created the data, they continue to have primary stewardship of that data. Okay, they are the ones that decide in a 120 institution federation, and this is exactly what we did in the GAIN Alzheimer's Association initiative a few years ago that was headquartered at USC, which is, I will keep my data. I will decide what data of that I want to expose to you, what subset of that I want to make available for real-time querying in that federation. But otherwise, there is nothing from me that you will ever be persisting. So that is one that has been sort of one way out, where you say that every query that is done is something that is done real time, but the data resides at its original repositories. I don't enter your house and take even a single item out of your house. This model is some,
And I just want to say that sorry to interrupt. I think like we just got like a warning of like a last minute thing. So if you don't mind, I want to ask each of you to give like a closing comment, Naveen. So we'll start with you, and I'm sorry to interrupt again. So maybe we'll do like a quick closing comment and we'll wind up. Naveen?
My single comment would be the few areas that I mentioned that I'm excited about seeing in the market and as practical applications in the next 5 years. I hope some of them make it.
Thank you, Naveen. How about you, Guna?
Yeah,
what's the takeaway for the audience?
For us, for me, I would say, like, for the entrepreneurs looking at this space, to particularly consider at-home and B2C solutions, because the capabilities are very, very different now compared to a while ago, and the opportunity is multi-fold. So it's quite an exciting space. And I would advise to look at the space and consider it.
Thank you, Guna. Dinesh?
I would say even in clinical, at least, diagnostics is the most exciting space, because if you're able to automate, enable that, you actually help a clinical treatment decision. The thing that I'm most excited about is how you combine multimodalities. Right, we work in pathology, but there's combining pathogenomics, right? Combining multiple modalities, because that's where it's really going to make a quantum leap the way we see it. But yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Dinesh, and thank you all. Actually, this has been a fantastic panel. Naveen, Guna, Dinesh, a fantastic panel. And I want to thank the organizers at Pan IIT for organizing a fantastic event. And back to you, Tavishi.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shashi. Thank you. See you,
Thank
Naveen,
you.
Guna.